several revisions of, I don't know how far he got. I don't know where that project is right now. Our last conversation was a few days before we went to the hospital, where we talked about spirituality. I guess that's what I have to say. I miss you, my friend Al. I miss you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Carter, and I've known Al for 49 years now. And he feels like a brother, very close brother. And I will start out by sharing my condolences to all 5 of the sons. I heard about those 5 sons for 49 years. I mean, every step that they took, I knew about. And it was very interesting, my last conversation with Al. He was going down to Houston for his next treatment, and we talked about that a little bit. And then I didn't hear any more from him, and I expected to, because just about every June we would meet at the Saratoga Jazz Festival. We missed one because Faith was helping him write the book, and as she mentioned and several others, Al was a very difficult person. And just like my real brother, we fought like cats and dogs, and we had a knockdown drag out. He didn't show up the next year at the Saratoga Jazz Festival. But when I got the note from Reggie that said, "Is Reginald or Reggie?" Reggie that says, "We invite you to this celebration of life." Alfred Phillips. My mouth fell open and I was mumbling to myself. I said, Al Phillips passed away. And my wife was standing next to me and said, Al Phillips passed away. And you could see it, her face drop. And I turned to her and I said, do you know what I'm saying? Do you know Al Phillips? She said, yeah. I said, do you know what passing away means? She said, yes. Now, my wife has Alzheimer's. And she doesn't remember anybody's name except for mine and perhaps my oldest son, who has the same name as mine. And for her to remember that much about Al and all the good times that we had, that was very, very special. She remembered all of that. Now, I met Al on the campus of Howard University in the physics department because I was on IBM's PhD recruiting committee. And I interviewed him and recommended him for hire to IBM. And he was taken in, they snatched him up. In fact, I used to tell Al later, I said, I used to be so envious of Al, because I was supposed to be the star, and they were raving about this good-looking, sharp guy who was just brought in. And I said, Al, you were the man. And as I recall, I think he was the second PhD that was hired by IBM, certainly the first PhD physicist. So that was the beginning of our relationship. And Al used to come by, he only had 2 kids at the time, come by the house all the time, and we used to do things. We used to visit each other's homes, the camping trip on the Ronda Creek, and all in between it, you see all the stories about these boys growing up. And that was very special to me. Very, very special. Now, the last thing that Al said to me when he was going down to Houston was that you have to write this book. I said, Al, I'm not into writing any books. I do have a pretty unique background, and he knew that. I used to be very, very, very heavily involved in civil rights. I was a real activist, shut Poughkeepsie down, to innovate. I used to remind him the only reason they were able to get that apartment on Montclair was I had filed all sorts of lawsuits. I helped integrate the Poughkeepsie school system. And Al and I used to have knockdown dragouts about where the black race should go. We also have had a lot of knockdown dragouts about science. We had a lot of knockdown dragouts about a whole lot of things. And we used to fight, and we would disappear from each other for a while, and then all of a sudden we were back talking to each other again. He was a special person, a very, very special guy. Al, when he finally got rid of that, I hope I'm not offending any boys. You're not boys, but you know what I mean when I say boys. That raggedy car, I don't know, what it was.
You're a roadmaster.
Right, yeah, that thing, I always thought it was gonna fall apart. And he decided, he called me and said, John, I'm gonna buy a Cadillac. And I said, really, you, Al, a Cadillac? He said, yes. And he said, what color should I buy? I mean, what color should I get? And I said, red. Fire engine red. And that's just what he did. He always felt that he always tried to convey to me anyhow that I was his special friend and he would do anything that I would say. But I don't think that was really true. But there were things like that that he would do. Now, the last conversation I had with him when he was going down to Houston to A.D. A.D. Anderson?
Yeah.
M.D. Anderson.
M.D. Anderson.
And I know that one real well because I lost my son-in-law there. And we talked about that quite a bit. And he started ranting on the phone to me. He said, John, you have to write that book. And this went on, I know, for at least an hour. And he kept telling me, you have to write. I said, I can't write the book. That's not my thing, writing books. You see, diverting a little bit, I used to goad Al about that book. He talked about writing that book for about 10 years, and I used to tell him, get off it. You're never going to write that book. And that's what, I think that's what one of the things that really got him going on doing it. I said, you're never going to write that book. And when he did come up to the Saratoga Jazz Festival, we had a lot of friends from Poughkeepsie, and I would take him around to visit all of them. And what did they say? Al is not going to write that book. That really got him upset. But when we had that last conversation on the telephone, he said, John, you have to write that book. All the experiences that you had, all the past that the past that you took to help open up things for a lot of us, and the stuff that you did, the science, the stuff that you did, lots of other things. And I said, that just wasn't my thing, and I had no intention of writing that book. I said, Al, don't you realize that I am a caregiver? And anybody that knows anything about caregiving, you have to live on a 36-hour day. You know what he said? John, you can take 20 minutes in the morning, every morning, to do that, even with your 36-hour day. And he kept at that, he kept at that, he kept at that until I finally said, okay. That was the nice conversation I ever had with Al. I feel I'm getting emotional thinking about that now because that was the last conversation. And it was when it became time for the Saratoga Jazz Festival, I called him to tell him again what section I would be sitting in the balcony of the Saratoga Jazz Festival, and I never heard back. I couldn't understand that. And now I know what had happened. And I want to share another very interesting part about Al. And something that he's done for me. And I'm very grateful for it. I don't think he ever realizes it. I had a back operation in '72. And it was very complicated. It was a simple operation. Supposedly, I had a disc removed, and the vertebrae were supposed to come together and become like one. It didn't happen. I was in the hospital for about 3 months. I had a complication, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And the pain was so excruciating. And I became addicted to morphine type drugs. One day, Al came to visit me, and I'm like this in the bed because I couldn't move. Any movement would just trigger this pain. And I said, Al, guess what? He said, what? I said, I figured it out. Guess what happened to me? I said, while I was lying in the bed like this, while I was lying in the bed, I was like this, and I said, I was staring at that corner up there. I couldn't raise my arm. I stared at the corner, and all of a sudden, I was in that corner, and I dropped down into my body. I went into my body, and I went over to that pain and started patting it, and it calmed down. I'm sorry, I'm getting chills telling this story. And he looked over me, he was standing and looked at me down in the bed, and he said, John, you were meditating. And excuse the expression, I was pissed. Because I'm a scientist, and we don't believe in that stuff like meditation. And at that particular time, this is in the 70s, nobody meditated. If you did, you didn't tell anybody that you meditated. And I had another big argument with him. I was not meditating. I guess maybe 6 months after I had recovered and got out, we got reintroduced to transcendental meditation, TM. And I became a follower of that. And one of the things, I think, was Malcolm.
Yes.
You were heavily involved with the Maharishi.
Yep.
He didn't introduce me to it, but he took me down to New York City one night, I guess about 11 o'clock, to an affair where we actually saw Maharishi. He didn't stop there. He also introduced me to something called Life Spring. Anybody in here ever heard of Life Spring? It was supposed to be the follow-on to EST. And next thing you know, I was into all sorts of spiritual movements in terms of my development. And all because of him. And I never thought that I would ever go that way because that was not part of me. Now the reason why I'm dwelling on this so much so is that I think that that was Al's gift to me after a long career at IBM and another 10 years as a professor at RPI. I have developed a third career. And that third career is, believe it or not, I'm a hypnotist. And I do healing work with people. And I have helped so many people. And I never would have thought that I would be doing that. But thanks to Al and this indirect, or maybe he knew he was doing, way led me over to that path. So Al, wherever you are, thank you, because I think that there are a lot of people that are very appreciative of what happened to me, and I just feel very good about that. I just wish that my wife, who was supposed to come with me, she was at the 80th birthday party, but she couldn't see all of this. And I can see how so many people, like all of you in here, speak so fondly of Al. Because he was like a brother to me, but like brothers, we fought. we did fight. I'm glad in my life that somebody explained to me what happened to him at the end, because I just couldn't, I knew he was terminal, but I didn't expect it to go the way that it did and as quickly as it did. So, thank you, Al, and thank you for the wonderful family and all the friends that you have led me to.
Now my cousin Stephanie is going to say something.
I actually want to call on my sister also to come up. I saw her in the back, so she's hiding. Maybe she stepped out for a second. So I wanted to bring up my grandmother, because as I saw my uncle, what occurred to me is I can't help but see her face in his face. And if you knew my grandmother, you would understand my Uncle Al. My grandmother was about the most righteous person I've ever known. She was college educated, though born in 1900. She was selfless, she was driven, and she was right. She was right. And even when I felt like, even when I could express my love for Christ or my love for God, it wasn't quite right. And that was okay, but you know, she had kind of her rules about how it was. And as a child, I was often at her house. My mom, being a single parent, my grandmother would babysit me. And when my uncles came into her house, you know, it would light up my world. My Uncle Bert, my Uncle Reggie, and rarely, because he was in the Northeast, my Uncle Al. And there was one time when my Uncle Al came, it was Malcolm and Joey, and took my sister and I back to his house in Wappingers Falls, and we stayed there for a while until our mother picked us up. And I didn't see Uncle Al a whole bunch while I was growing up, but before the station wagon, there was a Volkswagen bus, and it was the same exact way. There's my sister, so I'm going to call her up to the front yeah, you can't get away. So anyway, I say all this to say that the bus and the station wagon were a lot alike. And I had that, and years later, when I get your pictures of you guys near the Sequoias, or you guys near the Grand Canyon, I knew that looked like, oh, Dad, just take the picture. That you got from Uncle Al. So anyway, I'm just giving some recollections, Lynn. So my Uncle Al then would later come and visit us in South Salem, New York, because we were relatively close, and sometimes he would spend holidays with us. But he would always come through, and I don't know if most of you don't know this, I have 4 children. He would always come through with the Costco diapers. And I would think to myself, my God, he got it right. You know, here I am with 3 sons under 4, and he'd bring the Costco diapers, and he'd always be slightly late, but he got it right. So in talking with my uncle about education and meditation and running, my uncle was always just like my grandmother, right? You couldn't say it exactly like him and get it exactly right, but I was delighted that he taught me to meditate. And so I think about him in some way, shape, or form almost every morning. And I know that when I'm saying my mantra, it's right because he gave it to me. So I just wanted to share those few words about my uncle with my sister here.
So, am I supposed to say something about my uncle? I think, when I think about Uncle Al, I was thinking about him after I got the news. And I remember having this very clear image. I must have been about 3 or so. I remember him being in Chicago, and I remember just running up to him as a little girl. This was before you guys were born. And I just remember him hugging me and engulfing me, and I can't, what I remember is feeling extraordinarily loved by him. And that's just an amazing gift. I remember how beautiful he was. When I saw all of you standing up here, I could see him in you, and I think how elegant you look and are, and how smart you are, and how well he did by you. I don't think he could have given us, the planet, a better gift than you guys. I think of Uncle Al in relation to grandmother and Papa and Uncle Bert and Uncle Reggie and my mom. And you are outstanding. And you guys are outstanding. His sons are outstanding. And I know that, the line will continue. I was a children's librarian, and recently I heard a story about, it's an old folk tale, but one of the lines is that this young man is watching a funeral, and he asks this old wise man, is the person in the casket dead or alive? And the answer is that the person in the casket is alive because he has many children, and those children will continue, and he continues through those children. So Uncle Al is still living, as far as I'm concerned, through all of you, and I think through all of us. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I will miss him.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So now my brother Doug is going to read our father's eulogy.
When I think about Alfred Phillips Jr. in the most simplistic terms, he was an impassioned man, set on the course that he chose to run, while many African Americans born in his time chose to walk, crawl, or not move at all. His journey began on April 16, 1936, on the south side of Chicago. His father was a plume importer from Alabama, and his mother was a college-educated missionary from Mississippi. Among his first memories were of the overt American involvement in World War II on December 7, 1941. The house is very close to the University of Chicago, a place of importance during the atomic age as the site of the world's first sustained nuclear reaction under Enrico Fermi. Graduate students working on the bomb lodged at the family house. The innumerable paths a young man could take to become successful in life became singular as our dad's interest in their research fostered a long life enthusiasm for physics. His race was set. He attended a technical magnet school, did well, and went into the military, as did many men of his generation. Too young for Korea and too old for Vietnam, he joined the United States Army in the 1950s. The integrating Army saw that he had technical aptitude and put him in charge of a missile repair shop. He compared it to a car repair shop. Missiles entered broken but left fixed. The Army flew him to Europe during his personal time at almost no cost to him during one of his transports. He attended Loyola University in Chicago as an undergraduate, then Howard University as a graduate student. There he took his PhD in physics in 1968. He began to find his stride as self-discipline, a tremendous work ethic, and a results-oriented mindset converged. Dad knew instinctively that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go long, you go with another. As he navigated through the highways and byways of life, he came across 5 dynamic women who proved to be very instrumental in his life. Faye, Serena, Evelyn, Linda, and Karen. And from those relationships, he was given 5 sons: Joseph, Malcolm, Douglas, Raphael, and Reggie. He would go on to finish at Howard and work at IBM in New York's Mid-Hudson Valley in the first wave of African-American men hired for their minds and not their muscles. He had a long career there and was awarded several patents. Eventually, the personal computing revolution that IBM helped to create put a severe pressure on IBM. IBM loaned Dad to Cornell University as a professor of electrical engineering, and thus he was saved from the worst effects of IBM's downsizing. He taught at Cornell University for over a decade. As I reflect on Dad's life, the more I appreciate the relationship that he had with all of us, all of his sons. As children, however, we didn't understand this intense man who meditated and took what seemed like thousands of vitamins every day, who routinely watched Tony Brown's Journal, Nova, CNN, who demanded that his sons complete workbooks like The Pig Can Jig during summer breaks, who listened to books on tape in the car, who got turned on by physics, but not so much football or basketball, who was always armed with his day timer and followed it to the letter, who ran marathons for fun, who introduced us to steel cut oatmeal, tabbouleh, millet, couscous, who yelled when a quiet word would have worked better, who loved cursing, whether he was happy, sad, he just enjoyed it. He created songs, curse word songs, to highlight his favorite 4-letter words. For the life of us, and I'm speaking for all of the brothers, we couldn't understand those aspects of this guy. Now I'm going to tell you some things that we did enjoy, okay? As children, we did enjoy the road trips out west, the 2 minutes on and 2 minutes off conversations, the trips to Boston to see the symphony, listening to Roberta Flack and other classical music in the car, jogging with him on the weekends. And I remember this. My dad was always slim and trim, and I was a heavy-set young man. And he would say, "Doug, take your shirt off. Be proud." And I would just be jogging, and everything was going everywhere. I didn't know how I could be proud in that moment. Stand up, you're a Phillips. Stand up straight and tall. But getting back to the running, and if our side hurt, he would tell us to not focus on the pain. The McDonald's Happy Meals when they were a thing. The hard massages before going to bed. Being able to ask him why the sky was blue and receiving a scientific explanation. Going to visit Grandma, Uncle Bert, Aunt Winnie in Chicago. Going to hordes of museums. And his ongoing love affair with the Buick Roadmaster. He loved that car. That was his 6th son, the Buick Roadmaster. And it was always entertaining. Seeing Dad through adult eyes, we know that he was far from perfect, but he was an excellent father. I define excellence as doing the best you can at the level where you are with the knowledge that you have, and by that definition, he exemplified excellence. On June 25th, 2017, Dr. Alfred Phillips Jr. died of cancer with complicating pneumonia. He was 81 years old. Life is a marathon with hurdles, and while living, Dad overcame insurmountable odds and received many rewards. He ran his race his own way, and he finished strong. He lived with purpose and courage. He loved fiercely, taught tenaciously, and worked tediously to see himself at his best, so he could consistently perform at his best. He had visions of improving the world by changing the consciousness of people all over the world. He has, in effect, passed his baton to his 5 sons, who will take up his charge using their various gifts and talents. Moments before Dad passed, I remember Malcolm saying, "That's it, Dad, you're jogging down Tor Road. You're almost home." Well done, Dad. We love you.
All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Africana. Thank you, Cornell. There will be a repass at our home at 29 Highgate Circle, Ithaca, New York. Please come and join us. We have food and drink and everything you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.